In lesson 10.5, we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about displacement and density. Sometimes we want to find the volume of some irregularly shaped object, but we can't really use a formula to do it. So there's another way. We can find the object's displacement. This means that we place this object into a container that we already know the volume of. And then what we do is we check out how much water changes, and that is going to be the same thing as displacement. That'll give us the volume of the object that is irregular. Down below, what we see on the left-hand side is a container with water in it. And actually, we don't even know what the height is here, and it doesn't even matter. Because what ends up happening is that this initial height that we have here changes by a certain amount. So this is the height change. Or in other words, that is going to help us to talk about how much volume the object itself has, because that was the change in the water height, which will lead us to the new volume. So since the before and after picture from the left to the right after the object was dropped in the container of water changed by 2 centimeters, that means that the volume of the object is going to be equal to 10 times 15, which is the area of the base, times the change in the height of the water, which was 2. And when I multiply these three things together, I get a total of 300, and we were in centimeters, so that would be centimeters cubed. This is the object's volume. So the displacement was 2 centimeters for the height change, and that created a volume change of 300 centimeters cubed, which then tells us that the object has the volume of 300 centimeters cubed. Pretty clever way to find the volume of something that there is no formula for, so we use a way around it. Whenever you try to find density, there's a formula to find density, and the density formula is down below here. It is mass divided by volume. So if I were to tell you that there was an object, and this object weighed 351 grams, that's considered its mass, and you see that here on the top of the fraction. And you drop it into a cylindrical container, and the water rises 1.1 centimeters afterwards. Now, the reason they tell you that the thing rises that is because you could find the volume. When you think about the cylindrical container, if I'm drawing that picture, what I see is this happen here. And I know that my height of my water was a certain place, and then it rose to another place, and that rising was the 1.1. And what you're going to do then is just find the volume of the change. And so what you're doing is you're finding the volume that occurred in between those two bands of how much it rose. So really, you could draw a separate picture if you wanted to, representing that, and say, in effect, that you had a cylinder that kind of looked like this, 1.1, and they also told us that the radius was 3. So then if I want to find the volume, that's pi times the radius squared times the height of the cylinder, or in this case, what the water rose. And that information that we see down below here, this volume of the change, is what you see down below here in the fraction. And when you divide those two numbers, you get an end result for the density as 11.3. And I want to point out that you have to be careful about how you label things. So on the top, we know that our label was grams, because they told us it was in grams. And we know that volume is always in something cubed, and so that we have centimeters cubed. And when you look over, this is the label that we see for our final answer, grams per centimeter cubed. So density is mass times volume. We've talked at length about how to find volumes. In the previous slide, we talked about what happens with an irregular object and how to do that. So in these word problems, sometimes it might be helpful to draw a picture but the big thing to know is density is mass divided by volume. They're probably going to tell you how much something weighs, which is its mass, and then you just figure out what the volume is and divide them. Don't forget to label appropriately.